Okay. Welcome. I hope you are in good health. So, how did we get here? The corona crisis has a big impact on education. According to UNESCO data, in the Netherlands alone, more than 3 million students in primary and secondary education and almost 900,000 in tertiary education were affected by the school closure earlier this year. As a response, several research projects started to investigate the short and long-term effects of the crisis on education and distance education. Researchers, practitioners, and policymakers have questions about what is happening, how schools, teachers, students, and parents deal with the situation, but also about how the school closure affects the school career of pupils and students. So we asked ourselves, what can we do for the educational sector that is hit so hard? For this reason, we created the Action Team on COVID-19 related education research. In Dutch, this abbreviates simply to ACO. In this short presentation, I will walk you through our process. I'll show you some of the results of the questionnaires and some of the actions that we have taken based on these results. My name is Cedric van Driebergen. I'm a policy officer in NRO in the team for practice-oriented research, but I also have a background in teaching and teaching primary and secondary education. So who are we and why do we do this? Well, the we here is the Netherlands Initiative for Education Research. This abbreviates to NRO. NRO contributes to innovation and improvements in education by coordinating and funding educational research and by facilitating the connections between educational practice and research. The NRO thinks it's important that the knowledge from research is accessible for the education practice and policy, but also that there is no overlap in research that is conducted, so we don't ask too much of schools and practitioners. The Action Team brought together people from different teams within NRO, from fundamental research, policy-oriented research, practice-oriented research, and even from communication and knowledge utilization. In consultation with the Dutch Ministry of Education, Culture and Science, the NRO picked up the coordinating role in April 2020. View of current COVID-19 related education research on predefined themes. The goal for this overview was threefold. Firstly, we wanted to map who is conducting research, small scale or bigger scale, on corona-related educational issues or distance learning, and also where is this conducted. Secondly, we wanted to collect corona-related questions that practitioners in the field. And thirdly, we wanted to map which questions can already be answered by existing or ongoing research and what extra research is needed or should be conducted. So to reach these goals, we created a questionnaire for researchers and practitioners. For both questionnaires, we used input from the ministry to create 12 themes. In the questionnaire for researchers, we asked two things. We asked what research is already done or ongoing on these themes, either by them or by others. And secondly, we wanted to know which themes should be further investigated. In the questionnaire for practitioners, we asked which of these themes, those predefined themes, are the most urgent or important, and also why. So let's go deeper into the questionnaires. So the goal of this questionnaire was to create an overview of the education research related to COVID-19 and lasted from April until now, actually. So if you are a researcher in the Netherlands, you can still go to this website and add your research to our overview. The overview yielded initially 80 research projects. This input we labeled and categorized and the research projects were published on the NRO website. After that, we asked the project leaders. If they agreed with the content on our website, and if not, what adjustments should be made to keep the overview up to date. All project leaders were contacted again by phone in September 2020. They were asked if they actually conducted the research, if the description is still accurate, and if there were already initial results that could be shared. Well, we got feedback that researchers and educational professionals have used this overview to collaborate on similar questions. Based on an analysis of the individual projects per theme, it becomes clear that they cannot fully answer the underlying questions of the predefined themes. And that's mainly because a lot of the research is done within the own institution, and it's primarily in higher education. And also because complex causal relations, they were not researched in the beginning. The results of this overview show that most research, and also the research that actually says a lot, are on quality of education related to the educational outcomes and also the well-being of students. So the questionnaire for practitioners, the goal was to create an overview of COVID-19 related issues, knowledge questions, and themes that are relevant to the practitioners. The questionnaire took place during or in June and July 2020. In that period, the corona measures brought a lot of adjustments to education in the Netherlands. On the 16th of March, all schools were closed. On the 11th of May, primary schools opened, not at full capacity. And on the 2nd of June, in secondary education opened. In higher education, the institutions were encouraged to provide distance education as much as possible. Teachers, school leaders, and primary, secondary, and secondary vocational education participated in this online questionnaire, and more than 300 practitioners participated. We got most questions about the experienced workload of the teacher, and teachers felt, for example, that they were asked a lot because of sometimes the mixed measurements taken by the government. In a short while, they went from closing the schools completely. They had to adopt distance learning. There were problems with connectivity, etc. Also, teachers had the fear of getting the virus. They had to deal with parents, and all of this contributed to a higher experience workload of the questionnaire and a decrease of the well-being of the teachers. In our questionnaire, though, we also saw that some teachers valued teaching half days. So during the partial school closure, they were teaching half days, and teachers valued that they had more time to interact with their students. But this is, of course, a minority. Secondly, there were a lot of questions about well-being of students. So teachers report that the corona measures have negative effects on children. They see that they are in general a little bit more sad or unhappy. Of course, they are happy when they can come back to school, but still teachers report negative effects. They also notice that it creates a tension in the classroom because they have to comply to the measurements of the government, and this creates tension. And also teachers report that they have difficulty checking in with students. So seeing how they are doing and finding a way to support the students. And we hear back that some schools actively do more effort to check in with the students to remediate these problems. Thirdly, the quality of education and teacher professional development was reported. This is also a little bit in line with the previous point. Teachers, they find it difficult to support the students with their personalized learning path it takes a lot of time to support the student, and teachers suspect the decrease in the effective learning time or the instruction time. And also, teachers wonder what is the effect of all of this missed learning time or this missed opportunity to learn. Fourthly, accessibility and equity was reported by teachers. Some teachers, they experience an increase in inequality, where primarily the students with learning disabilities or a complex situation at home didn't learn as much as they were expected to learn in a normal classroom setting. And also, teachers noticed that parents couldn't offer their children the support they need, for example, because they didn't speak the Dutch language, or they had a lower educational level, or they had insufficient financial resources. And on top of that, in some households, there was a lack of teaching resources, a quiet place at home to study, these kinds of things. So take a moment to look at these themes. This is a top 6 for researchers and for practitioners. And as you can see, they are more or less the same themes, but there's a different prioritization. And of course, this can be explained that for the researchers, a lot of research is done within the own context or own institution, and is targeted at either quality of education and accessibility of education. And for the practitioners, we see that they reported a lot of experienced workload and a decrease of well-being. And this can be due to the fact that a lot of teachers responded to our. So what are the next steps? So knowledge utilization. So first of all, we created thematic pages. On these pages, we bundled the most important practical but research-informed information for practitioners. And one of these pages, for example, is dedicated to distance education. And you'll find what we know from research, practical guidelines, and questions that colleagues, practitioners have asked, for example, through the Knowledge Roundabout. The Knowledge Roundabout is a support service for the educational staff in the Netherlands. And this service helps teachers, school directors, education policymakers, and other educational staff to use research evidence in their daily practice by submitting questions that are matched with evidence resources. The questionnaire for practitioners yielded questions that could go through the process of the roundabout. So the process is as follows. There's like 4 big steps. First, you ask a question through a web form. Then, secondly, knowledge brokers, they will contact the questioner to focus the question and make it more. Then, thirdly, the knowledge brokers, they make an analysis using scientific literature, or they contact experts, and then you receive your answer to the question. And fourthly, the Knowledge Roundabout then shares this answer to the wider education community so they can. I'm a teacher in secondary education. Learning of my students. Learning environment, I can ask a question about what are the characteristics of a good learning environment. Okay, so the next thing that we did in relation to the knowledge utilization is we organize different symposia. On the 15th of January, the NRO organizes the Symposium of Higher Education, New Directions After the Pandemic. This is in Dutch. You can still register for that. It's on the 15th of January. So in this symposium, 18 education researchers, they will talk about what is known for what they researched the last months, and also what this means for the direction of education in the future. And yeah, besides that, we also, this is for higher education, but we also want to organize things or symposiums or conferences for different educational sectors, for example, in primary or secondary education. So this is already our last part. The programming. Yeah. Firstly, we want to use this this input for our own program, for setting out research, putting it on the agenda in 2021, and there will come a new. We'll see how we can incorporate our efforts. Also, it's important that we look for additional resources, for example, from the Ministry of Education, so we can fund the research that is actually okay. So before we go into the Q&A part, I want to give a shout out to the ACO team. We are a group of people who do this next to our regular task. So it's amazing to work with those motivated people. And I would like to thank you for listening and participating. And yeah, Sasha, this is the end of the recording.